Yo, what's going on, everyone? How you guys doing today? Welcome back to the new video. In today's video, we're going to be going over a build to help you with this week's Nightfall. This week is pretty exciting. The Illuminati strike is here for the very first time, and also the Slammer is back. So I know a bunch of people are going to head into LFG this week, so this video is going to be for you guys that are heading in there. The purpose of this build is to make it as painless as possible to go through this GM, and basically always get that completion. You're basically going to be able to deal with everything the strike throws at you, no matter what your teammates might be running, or what they may not be running. But anyways, let's get into it, and first, let's talk about the things that are going to be must-haves for this build. For the weapon, you're going to need the Graviton Lance Pulse Rifle, and for your piece of armor, you're going to need either the Orpheus Breaks, or an exotic class item with the Shards that got a perk on it. And later when we talk about the armor, we're actually going to go over the pros and cons of running each one. But basically, as long as you have one of those two and the Graviton, you're going to be pretty good. So since we already mentioned the Graviton Lance, let's actually start with that by looking at the weapons. So we're going to be starting off with our main weapon, the Graviton Lance, and this is like the perfect weapon for this strike. It's a void weapon, so it benefits from the surge, and it's also an anti-barrier weapon. So we're going to be able to deal with those anti-barriers, and the Graviton is really good for that. Especially if we have the Catalyst, you have a morphle weapon on it, meaning that it's going to be doing 20% more damage against all the champions. It's also going to be amazing at ad clear, which is something that we're going to have to be doing a lot in this strike. There's a lot of ads in this strike, so having the Graviton Lance is going to be fantastic. It's going to be able to just destroy full groups of enemies with a couple of shots. The majority of the stats are also going to have void shields, so you'll also be able to break them really easily with the Graviton. And if you have the Catalyst, every shield you break, you get another shield yourself with Turnabout. So hopefully you guys have your Catalyst done, because it just makes the weapon even more amazing than it already is. But yeah, the Graviton is going to be our main weapon for champions and for just ad clear. It's going to be the weapon that we're going to have out most of the time. Now for our special weapon, we're going to go with the Coal, because, you know, it's a rocket sidearm. Rocket sidearms are fantastic right now. And also the other type of champion we have in this GM is Unstoppables. Meaning that with the Graviton and with the rocket sidearm, we're going to have all the champions covered. And the Coal is just going to be fantastic at pretty much doing everything. Dealing with ads, dealing with the champions, damaging the boss. It's going to be able to do it all. And the last weapon I'm going to recommend, it's a Void Rocket. I do like the Fade Keeper from this season. This is going to be just basically to deal with champions. So yeah, whenever you see a bigger enemy, you shoot your rocket at it, and it should make dealing with it a lot easier and faster. You definitely don't want to deal with multiple big enemies at once, so you want to take them out as soon as possible. Now moving on to the super, we're going to be wearing the Tether. This is going to be amazing for ad control, and there's just so many places in this strike where a bunch of ads just rush at you. You're going to be getting so much value out of your tethers, since there's a lot of ads around in a lot of places, that you definitely want to spam this thing as much as you can. If you see a group of ads are spawning, fire it in there, and you should get about 40 to 50% of the super back, thanks to our exotic armor. So don't be shy. If you see a group of enemies, shoot your tether. Don't worry, you'll get back really fast. Now for our melee and grenade ability, we have the stasis combo. I will refuse to drop the stasis combo, the Withering Blade plus the Dose Field. It's low on freeze, I use such good debuffs that it's hard to say no to these things. And they also build up your Transcendence Darkness meter really quickly, especially at Dust Field. If you throw it right on a champion, your meters can move really quickly, meaning that you're going to be able to spam Transcendence quite a lot. And that's pretty much what you want to do with this. You want to spam Transcendence, you want to spam your super, or basically you just want to spam abilities as much as we can, so we can always keep all the enemies at bay. Especially since in the boss fight, or just halfway through the strike where you have to survive, those are places where you definitely want to spam with your abilities to deal with all the enemies that are going to be spawning. Now for our aspects, we're going to have Ascension and Stylish Executioner. Now Ascension is going to do a couple of different things. It's going to give us some really easy way to become Amplified for us and our teammates. And whenever we're Amplified, we're going to get 30% damage resistance thanks to one of the season mods. It will jolt any targets around, which is really nice, especially when there's a lot of ads around. And it also works very well with our other aspect, Stylish Executioner. Whenever we hit our Ascension and we kill something with it, we will go invisible. So it's going to be another way that we can just panic invisibility while at the same time being amplified and getting that 30% damage resistance. The uptime on Ascension is crazy. You can pretty much be permanently amplified as long as you pair it up with the right fragments, which is what we're doing today. Before we run out of amplified, we're gonna have our dodge back, so we're gonna be able to amplify ourselves again and jolt anything around us. Ascension has to be one of my favorite abilities to run this season. It is just so good. It does so many different things that work very well. Now our second aspect is Stylus Executioner. Is gonna make us go invisible whenever we kill something with an elemental debuff. And we have a couple of them on this build. We have Sever, so if we kill something that's severed, we're gonna go invisible. If we kill something that's slow, we're gonna go invisible. If we kill something that's frozen, we're gonna go invisible. And if we kill something that's jolted, which is gonna be very easy, we're gonna go invisible. So we actually have quite a lot of different ways to activating Stylus Executioner and go invisible. The reason we want invisibility is basically when things get a little too hectic. A Stylus Executioner for us during this GM is basically gonna be like a timeout. We go invisible and we basically just get to chill for a couple of seconds. We can get out of a dangerous area, we can go for a rest. It's just gonna add a bit of extra safety for the build, especially when it comes to the boss fight. I see a lot of people are struggling with the boss fight, so that's why I added Stylus Executioner to this build, for the build to be a little safer. We are gonna have all the damage resistance, but just because we have high damage resistance, it does not mean that we can't die. So invisibility is definitely gonna help, especially in the boss fight. Alright, so now let's move on to the fragments that we have on this build. The first one we're taking a look at is gonna be the Facet of Sacrifice. Well, we have a Solar, Arc, or Void buff. Ability Final Blows grant us bonus Darkness Transcendence energy, meaning that we're gonna be able to build our Darkness energy a little faster. So since we have such a high uptime on Amplified, we're always gonna be getting some bonus Darkness Transcendence energy, meaning that we're gonna have Transcendence up more often and we can just spam it, and that's exactly what we want. Now the next fragment is gonna be the Facet of Hope. Whenever we have an elemental buff, like Amplified, our class ability will regenerate more quickly. This is pretty much what's gonna allow us to keep our constant Amplified up, so we can keep that damage resistance and all the other good things that come with it. Next up, we're gonna have the Facet of Solitude. Landing rapid precision hits emits a severing blast from the target, and when we're transcendent, the blast is bigger. This is gonna be fantastic when dealing with some of the bigger enemies like the champions or the boss. You can actually proc this on the boss really easily by shooting his shoulders, meaning that he's gonna be doing less damage and is gonna be a bit less of a threat. He's still gonna be pretty dangerous though, but he's gonna be doing less damage, so you may actually survive some attacks from him that you wouldn't otherwise. It's also gonna affect the champions and pretty much any enemy that can tank a couple of shots. And whenever you kill something that's severed, you're also gonna go invisible thanks to Stylus Executioner, so that's also pretty nice. Next up, we're gonna have Facet of Balance, and this is gonna give us back grenade and melee energy whenever we defeat things with light or darkness damage. For light, we get melee energy, and for darkness, we get grenade energy. This is just gonna help us get our abilities back faster, and since there's so many enemies in this strike, you're definitely gonna see a difference. You're gonna be getting your abilities crazy fast. And the last fragment that we're gonna have on this build is gonna be the Facet of Protection. Where we're surrounded by combatants, we're more resistant to incoming damage, and whenever we pop Transcendence, it increases the effect of that resistance. It is 15% at base and 25% during Transcendence. This is gonna give you a bit of extra survivability when you need it, when you are surrounded by enemies. This is gonna be basically constantly on at the boss fight. So this thing is gonna be putting in the work, giving you a bit of extra damage resistance so you can tank more damage and survive things that otherwise you wouldn't. So Facet of Protection is definitely gonna be fantastic for this GM. Now for exotic, we're gonna have the Orpheus Rig, or the class item with the Shards of Galanor. First, I'm gonna talk about the Orpheus Rig. So the Orpheus Rig is what you wanna run if you want to use more consistency at getting half your super back. It is very easy to get 50% of your super. You can use fire as soon as you see the enemy spawning, and as long as they keep getting tethered, you're still gonna be getting that extra energy. It also doesn't just give you super energy, but it actually gives energy to your other abilities as well, like your grenade and your melee. So if you want to just consistently always get that 50%, you basically want to go with the Orpheus Rigs. Now if you don't mind having a little bit less consistency, you could go with the Spirit of Galanor. Basically, you wait for the enemies to spawn, you tether them just like with the Orpheus rig, and if you tether enough of them, you get 50% of the super bag. The thing about it is that it's not super consistent. Sometimes you get the 50%, sometimes you get 40%, sometimes you only get like 20%. So it is definitely not the most consistent one. But the great thing about it is that you can pair it up with a whole other exotic perk, and that's pretty much like the advantage you have with the cloak. You want to go that direction. They're both going to work pretty well, so I'm going to leave that one up to you. So we're going to quickly go over some of the mods that we're running. We have Radiant Light, Harmonic Siphon, and Heavy Ammo Finder on the helmet. You definitely want Harmonic Siphon. You gotta be making lots of orbs with your Graviton. It's gonna be crazy. After that, we're gonna have Harmonic Loader, Focusing Strike, and Momentum Transfer, just so we can get our abilities back a little faster. And for his chest piece, we have double Void Resistance and a Concussive Dampener. There's a lot of dangerous Void damage at the boss fight with the boss, so you definitely want to have these. On the boots, we have Recuperation, Absolution, and Void Scavenger, so we can use a rocket a lot. And lastly, for our class item, we're going to have Outreach, Utility Kickstart, and Proximity Ward. We have Utility Kickstart because it's actually one of the few mods that works with Ascendance, just so we can spam Ascendance even more. Even if you weren't spamming it enough already, we'll spam it even more. Now on the artifact, the main ones we want to have is Counter Energy, Radiant Orbs, Galvanic Armor, Transference, and Shield Crush. It basically makes it so we are Radiant whenever we pick up Orbs for Light. We get that 30% damage resistance for being amplified, and the other mods are going to help us basically get our abilities back faster. Again, just so we can spam more abilities, because spamming abilities and Super and Transcendence is pretty fun, and it's an easy way to deal with a bunch of ads and you staying alive. And with that, that's actually going to be the end of the build. As always, I'm going to leave a link in the description and in the comments below in case you guys want to give it a try. And if you guys actually do end up giving it a try, make sure you come back and tell me what you guys think about the build. I had a lot of fun coming up with this build. I actually ended up liking this GM quite a bit. I think the main problem that people are going to run into this GM is that they probably just haven't done the strike a lot. So they don't know like where the champions spawn or where like ads are coming from. But after a couple of runs, I'm sure you will no longer be struggling with this Grandmaster. It's not that bad once you get a couple of runs in. But anyways, with that, we're going to wrap up today's video. Hopefully all of you guys have enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did, dislike if you didn't, subscribe to the channel in case you guys haven't already. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care everyone, have a good rest of your day, and good luck with the GM this week.